Hi guys, welcome to Keeping Score, Tracking, and Recording Points, an officials webinar sponsored by the Virginia Roller Derby Network. We are all super happy to have you here with us, and we're going to learn a lot and hopefully have some laughs along the way.
A little disclaimer before we begin. So please note that the information that's being shared today is not from the WFTA. We are not WFTA sponsored in doing this. It comes from our experiences as officials, which you'll learn a little bit more about us today in just a little bit. Anything that we share is from our experiences, from our understanding of the rules and how to interpret them. So please keep that in mind. This is a limited amount of time that we've got today. I know 2 hours can be a long time for a webinar, but it's going to go by fast and we're going to have a great time. If something isn't covered, it's not because it isn't important. It's because we're trying to cover as much information as possible, but to do it in a way where everyone's learning and that it makes a lot of sense. Today is an intermediate clinic. We are assuming that you've seen at least one game of roller derby and that you understand some of the very basics of what points are, how they're gained, and some of the very basic rules. We encourage you to share any of the materials from today, but please make sure that you give us credit. All of our slides have credit attachments on the bottom of them. Who are we? So my name is Admiral Mayhem, she, her. I'm with the Charlottesville Roller Derby Group. I've been in roller derby for 15 years. I've been officiating for 14 of those 15 years. A couple of my highlights include going to JRDA champs 4 times, going to several WFTA postseasons, and I do love to head ref a game, very much so. And I will turn it over to Lynn.
Hey, I am Adrenaline, she, they. I am the head referee for River City Roller Derby. I just hit my 11th year last month. Most of my time in Derby has been as a skater. I have a couple of years of rookie coaching experience, and 3 seasons ago, I stepped up to be head referee for our league. Some of my highlights are I went to RollerCon for the first time this year, and I taught a class called Ref Curious, and I love jamming and jam reffing. So I'm going to pop it over to G.
Hi guys, I am certified G. My pronouns are she, her. I've been with Dominion Derby Girls now for quite a while, since 2017. I have 15 years in Derby, through multiple states in the US, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, and then 7 years officiating. My highlights, I've reffed in Italy and Japan. The military took us to both. I am one of those rare officials that I love NSOing and SOing. I love skating. I love not skating. I love everything. And I really love to front IPR and jam time. I'm going to throw it over to Le Corbusier or Bruce.
Hello, I'm Le Corbusier, or she, her. You can also call me Bruce. I am the head official for Charlottesville Roller Derby. I have been officiating and in Derby for 14 years as of a couple months ago, and I have been pretty much the head official ever since then. Some of my highlights are WFTA champs and postseason a few times, and I really love being a PLT, or penalty lineup tracker. And I'm going to throw it over to Tank.
Hi, I'm Tank Boy. Tank is fine. He, him. I'm also, like Lynn, with River City Roller Derby. September, this month right here, marks my 8.5 anniversary of Derby and officiating. I am my league's eternal head NSO, which kind of spurred me to create the NSO training clinic I do with every rookie intake we have with our league. Every time they come in, I train them all. I was able to be part of the WFTA champs back in 2017. And even though I can do all the positions fine, I got no problem with them, I do love to score keep because that was the first thing I ever did.
Let's find out who you are. So for who we've got for today, the knowledge and skill level that we've got is really interesting to see. We have a lot of beginners who are joining us today who have said that they have about 0 to 10 games in terms of their officiating experience, mostly scrimmages at practice, still learning officiating roles and responsibilities. Our advanced, so 6.3%, anywhere between 50 plus games that have done sanctioning, high level gameplay experience. Thank you for being here. And our intermediate group that we've got, so 10 to 50 games of officiating, mix of regulation and sanctioning experience. We recognize that it's really hard to have a one size fits all for everyone. So if you're somebody here that's advanced, and you're like, I already know that information, we really appreciate you being here. Hopefully this is a webinar that you can take back to other folks to help them learn as well. We're hoping to get into some more like ticky-tacky technical stuff, but we're going to see how that goes today. And then what is our categories for our skating officials and our non-skating officials? It was almost an even split. We've got 56% of skating officials and 43% of non-skating officials. Everybody, though, as Tank's going to tell us, is an official.
You'll see a lot of abbreviations and acronyms. SO stands for skating official. That's the shorthand for the refs, the ones in the stripes on the track. SOs include both the front and back inside pack refs, the jam refs, and the outside pack refs. On our side of the table, the NSOs, we are the non-skating officials. These are lovely folks in the black shirts that support the game with a variety of options. You could be a scorekeeper, scoreboard operator, a jam timer, a penalty lineup tracker, a penalty box timer, and a penalty box manager. End of the day, all of us are all officials on the same team, so we work together. Keep in mind, NSOs are also knowledgeable in the rules of flow and gameplay, just like the skating officials, but with a unique perspective due to our tasks. We have the ability to make calls, like those assessed in the penalty box, and feedback from them should be weighed with the same respect and trust as a skating official. The input can be critical to handling an official review or understanding simply a complex situation.
So we want, as folks who have been in this for a long time, one of the big things that is really important to us is that people are not just learning what number goes in what box, or what is the rote thing that I need to do in this specific situation, but to understand a little bit about the theory behind scoring and points, terminology behind that, and that knowledge is then going to help you interpret any situation that you could get into. And we're going to talk about that in our breakout sessions as we go. We're going to talk about communication between all of the officials, who you should be listening to, who you need to be checking in with in order to not only assess the points, but how to record them and display them. In the NSO session, we're going to focus on scorekeeping paperwork and what the scoreboard is sort of showing you, some of those basics. But I want to say that it's really important for our skating officials to also know what is on the paperwork in order for you to better understand what information is being captured where. You throw up points and you're like, I guess that's good, but it is being captured somewhere, and why, and how you can access it if you need to later. We're also going to be talking about how penalties impact the ability to score points, how blocking impacts jammers' position and ability to score points. That's more in the skating officials side of things, but it's also useful to be an active scorekeeper, how to be able to understand that so you can start seeing things and have that equal communication between officials as we go. Each of us are going to be sharing our favorite tips and tricks that we've learned over the years. Some of these are part of official paperwork. Some of these are just ways to kind of keep track of things in your mind as other things are going on, because we know a lot's going on during the game, and we're excited to share those with you.
Okay, our scorekeepers and jam refs should meet to set communication expectations. Always before every game, meet up. Make sure you introduce yourselves, names, pronouns, if you're new to the position or how much experience you do or don't have. Make sure, even though it seems simple, what team color are you, and confirm that you are indeed switching at halftime. The jam refs should show the scorekeeper how they will hold up points, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you do this in front of them and in the middle of the track to see if the points are visible from the score table. There is no standard 3, and everyone does this differently because bodies are different, and they'll have them show you different ways they show their 3s. Always check to make sure you understand which one they're going to show you. The jam refs and scorekeepers can have a different 3 as long as there is a shared understanding of what the other one's going to see to confirm the points. Jam refs also show the no initial trip hand signal of their choice. Discuss communication across the track during jams. Discuss communication at the end of the jams and ways to confirm points match. Any other quirks or little preferences of unofficial hand signals can be important. And at the end, they also like to share some little personal thing about yourself. Some do flavors of ice cream. Some ask you your favorite horror movie. It's just a little icebreaker so you kind of get to know the people you're working with.
Can we take a second before we move on just to show our different 3s? People said they couldn't see them unless we were talking. So hopefully now you can see my 3 that I'm talking, right? So I generally use my thumb and my 2 forefingers.
Here's a different 3 that you can also use if you're out there going around.
I got the I love you 3 for nice and spread out fingers here.
And it's important, if you're an NSO, that you can either match exactly what your jam ref is doing, or you can just have an understanding that you're going to be throwing up different threes. So if G threw up her 3 like this, and I wanted to do it differently, we can do that as long as we agree to that at the beginning of the game.
Yep. And then another, we said no initial. So I do mine with my thumb to the side, generally held at chest height.
Also do mine like that as well.
I will do my no initial like I am riding the little scooter when I turn around. So I'll do this breakaway kind of hand signal, and then I might move if I go back to my position.
And I've also seen it done where the fist is underneath the chin.
Which is really good if you're needing to write with one hand. That way you're not doing something with both hands, that you can just kind of confirm. And that's another thing that you can check to make sure that you're on the same page of understanding what's happening.
Before we split off, we're going to talk about specific terminology and how words mean specific things when we are talking about what we see on the track, especially issues that we need to solve or confusions that are going on. We're going to have a Derby vocabulary lesson and the specific differences between what a pass is, what a trip is, and what a lap is. So we'll start with what a pass is, because that's kind of our smallest piece of the puzzle, if a pass happened or not, if it was earned or not. So these hips don't lie. A jammer earns a pass and gets a point when their hips, their center of mass, moves ahead of an opposing skater's hips, center of mass. And the pass must happen in derby direction, counterclockwise, but the skater who is passing can be facing forwards or backwards when they earn that pass. So I often see skaters that are skating backwards out of the pack, trying to call off the jam to get as many points as possible while they are facing backwards. We have a little asterisk because, of course, there's some nuance for how the pass must happen. But for very basic level understanding, this is our pass. Next up, we have what a trip is. Jammers make trips through the pack. And the very first trip that our jammers make is the initial trip, and that helps us determine who is lead, who is not lead, or if lead is lost, and there will be a 2-minute jam. And each trip after the initial trip gives jammers a chance to score points on opposing blockers by passing them. Our final vocab is what a lap is, or lapping. So jammers begin lapping opponents after they complete that initial trip. So second, third trips, they begin to lap their opponents. And jammers can lap an opponent and not necessarily earn that pass, but they can yield, cede, come back off the track and repass an opponent to pick up that missed point if they're trying to nickel and dime, get all the points that they can. Or if they're still on that initial trip, then they can cede, repass that opponent so that they can earn lead status if that is part of their strategy.
All right, guys, moving on to talking about earned passes and not earned passes. This is what we used to call no pass, no penalty. We no longer do. So jammers can earn a pass and gain an opponent's point if they are wearing the star on their helmet visibly, right? And the jammer is either upright and in bounds while passing the opponent, or the opponent gives up their position by skating behind the inbounds jammer. So that was the asterisk that we talked about earlier, that you can give up your point there. So we have a special hand signal for this that you can see on the right, your no earned pass signal. So you're going to keep one finger, one hand stationary. You're going to rotate the other hand around it, right, with your finger. Both fingers up, pointer fingers, right? And rotate around. Do not move both. This gets very confusing.
And you can also do more than one finger. If there's 2 blockers in the mix, you can have that 2 and no earned pass on those 2, 3, 4 blockers.
So that first part, jammers earn a pass and gain an opponent's point, right? If they're wearing the star on their helmet visibly. That's why it's super important if you are a head referee, when you're doing your captains and coaches meeting, that you ask to see their helmet covers to make sure that they are in fact either double-sided, right? So the star is visible on both sides if they accidentally put it in on inside out, or that if it's not double-sided, you remind them that, hey, if your star is not visible, you accidentally put this on inside out, your jammer will not be earning points as they pass. They won't be earning a pass. right? Then we go to that next and. The jammer has to be upright and in bounds while passing an opponent. You notice we don't say anything about their opponent's status. Does the opponent have to be upright or in bounds? And that's because that doesn't matter. For earning a pass as a jammer, it's only important that the jammer is upright and in bounds. The opponent could be down, the opposing blocker could be down, they could be out of bounds, they could be on one knee. Their status does not matter as far as that. And then finally, that or the opponent gives up their position by skating behind the inbounds jammer. So you'll often see this on runbacks, where the jammer might have entered behind their opponent's hips, and then the opposing blocker is just continuing to try to do that run back, and they've ceded their original position to that inbounds jammer. All right, here we have an awesome example of a no earned pass, but it is rather fast. So the first thing we're going to do is just watch it all the way through. So we're looking at the white jammer here. You can see at the very end, our jammer referee signaled a no earned pass. Let's watch again. So we watch this a little slower. You see that the white blocker is knocked out by that black, or the white jammer is knocked out by that black blocker. As black blocker is stumbling, their right foot goes out of bounds, which means that they have lost their superior position. They've re-entered and established their position on the track, but white jammer is allowed to enter in front because that no earned pass rule. So while they haven't picked up the black blocker's point, they are allowed to re-enter in front of them. You'll see our jammer referee at the bottom doing that lovely no earned pass signal. Now, just because, right, that they got that no earned pass, they didn't pick up the point on that round, doesn't mean that they can't get it in the future. They can always cede and pick up that point again. All right, moving on to airborne passes.
Yeah, what happens when the pass happens not on the track, but in the air? Fun fact, this is me going for a little test flight, trying to jump the apex. So a skater who passes opponents while airborne will earn those passes and therefore the points if they are upright and inbounds when they take off and they land inbounds skate first. So that can be any part of the skate. It can be one of the wheels or the toe stop or the side of the skate. As long as you hit inbounds with a skate first, then you will pick up those points and that pass. If the jammer takes off during the first set of the jam ending whistles, that tweet, 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 they will earn passes and score those points. So if they take off during 1, 2, or 3, they have a chance to hopefully land upright and inbounds and skate first to get those points.
So Victoria comments, with airborne points, they still get the points, even if they fall out of bounds after initial landing. So assuming the initial landing was the skate in first.
Yeah, that's correct. So especially as a jammer, if you can go for it and try to stick that landing, as long as your skate lands, if you fall immediately, I have a lot of clips of me going for apex jumps and then just falling inbounds after I complete the jump, but skate first. So if you have that spidey sense that the jam is ending, or if you're a lead jammer and you can end the jam, as long as you hit inbounds, skate first, you pick up those points, and then what happens afterwards is part of the equation.
All right, another tricky point situation comes from not on the track points. As a beginning referee, I was like, not points? What? But then they're not points. No. So a not means not on the track point. So what or who are they and how are they earned? So a not point is earned on a skater who is sent to or is currently serving time in the penalty box, leaves the track due to an injury or to temporarily fix equipment or skates, was not even part of the jam in the first place because their team didn't field the maximum number of skaters, right? Or returns to active gameplay behind the jammer. A good way to think about not points is to think of them as like snapshots in time. You're taking a picture of what's happening on the track at that time. So when the jammer first earns a pass on any opposing blocker, they get all the not points in existence at that point, at that moment of their trip. So if a blocker is a not point at the end of the jam, and the jammer has not earned a pass on any opposing blocker in this trip, then they don't get that not at the end of the jam. A good thing can be to look at your box, right? Make sure you're looking at the penalty box. Make sure you take a moment to breathe. That's where we miss a lot of NOTT points.
I think as we're kind of taking this second, I think one of my favorite examples that happens here is that you've got a blocker and a jammer that both come out of the box at the same time. And that blocker that's behind the jammer, the jammer hasn't gotten that point yet. You know, we're on a scoring trip. And as soon as the jammer passes one of the other blockers that's in front of them, that engages our NOTT point scenario. But if that doesn't happen, let's say that wall is super strong and that jammer stays stuck in the back and the blocker behind them rejoins in front, that blocker is no longer in a danger NOTT point scenario because they've regained the ability to defend their point. So just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean that the math is going to work out.
Yeah,
so we've
Captain Trips had a great question. They said, so as long as they made one pass, earned 1 point, then they get all of the NOTT points. That's correct. Right. So as long as you've earned one pass, if there are two blockers in the box, the jammer picks up both of those NOTT points. Then
Yeah,
Samantha,
they'll go from 0 to 3.
0 to 3. Yep. Samantha's added in a fun detail about NOTT points. The single blocker passed to earn the NOTT point does not need to be on the track. That's true. The passing jammer to earn their pass.
All right, let's go to the next one. Let's talk about scoring avoidance for automatically earned passes. So per section 3.3, opponents can only be scored upon by remaining ahead of the jammer or by ensuring that when they are passed, that pass is not earned. And the way that they can ensure that that pass is not earned is through blocking. So that is the main way to defend for your point. If a jammer completes the scoring trip, having no opportunity to earn a pass on an opponent, that pass is considered earned at the end of the trip when the jammer exits the front of the engagement zone. So this includes opponents who are ahead of the engagement zone, and when the jammer has completed that trip, pivot is in front of the jammer. Jammer skating, pivot is blocking them. They hear that out of play call at the front. Out of play call, jammer goes off, continues forward. That pivot is now outside the engagement zone. And so even before the jammer had passed the pivot, gotten that earned pass, because again, that scoring trip is going to stop at that engagement zone, we get that point, and that's why we show 4 there. So opponents who are ahead of the engagement zone when the jammer completes their trip out of the engagement zone. Opponents who are ahead of the engagement zone at the end of the jam when the jammer is on a scoring trip and ahead of the rearmost pack blocker. So this is kind of like a NOTT on the track point, but not quite. So jammers come in, has passed one person in the back. Let's say that there was a pivot that was trying to assist their jammer who's gone out of play in the front. And at that very moment, the jam ends. So we have the 1 point for who we passed in the back. Let's assume that we didn't pass the other 2 blockers that were there. And then we've got this blocker. We never had the opportunity to pass them, but because they're outside of that engagement zone, they're out of play. And so we do actually get their point. Now, if they were in the engagement zone, we would not get that point, right? We'd only get 1 point instead of 2. So that's why we're checking our box at the end of the jam, making sure that we're collecting everything together that we need to be. And then opponents who are out of play behind the pack, if a jammer re-enters the track from the penalty box in front of that blocker and the jam ends, meaning there's no opportunity to pass that blocker. So this is a little bit different than the scenario that I had just mentioned, because that one is assuming they both come into the engagement zone. So they're still a part of that active play. But if, let's say they enter, say that the penalty box is way far down at the end of the track. And so when they come on, when our jammer and blocker scenario come on, they are very far away from where the game is happening. And at that point, the jammer, let's say that they run off, they start engaging in the pack, that blocker has an equipment malfunction, so they have to stop there on the track to handle that. And at that point, the jam is called because of how everything has happened and the placement of that blocker being so far outside of the engagement zone. We are able to get that point even because it's not a NOTT on the track point. The skater is on the track. It's just that the ability to have earned that pass is not available. So we get it. We don't see that one a lot, but it does happen every now and then. So things to look out for.
So Fury asked if there's, regarding the engagement zone, if there are any video examples for a blocker who's out of the engagement zone but isn't in the penalty box. So I'm going to look through our resources and see if we have any examples for that.
I think we could also, when we all come back, since we're going to pull up Nerd Space later, especially because it shows the engagement zone, these are some hard things to hold in your mind if you're not a like really visually mental person. So there's a lot of stuff in the casebook that is tricky for me to understand when I read it, but
There's a lot of video on YouTube in terms of being able to watch games and footage to find examples to be like, ooh, what is this? And having a discussion. I will say that I was watching a video the other day because we were looking for no earned pass examples. And the more that I watched it, the more I was like, wait a second, that's not right. And unfortunately, there's a lot of video that's on YouTube now that's a little dated and old, and we've updated some of the rules a little bit enough that like some of the things are correct, but some of the things aren't correct anymore. So please take that with a grain of salt when you're going out and about and checking on things. We will have some more examples, and like Lynn said, we will have Nerd Space coming up here shortly to work through some of the different scenarios because it is better to have a visual. The other thing as well, if you are an official that has a league that has enough people to do a little baby scrimmage, it doesn't need to be a half an hour, doesn't need to be 20 minutes, but it could be something where it's like, hey, I have 5 skaters. I have 10 skaters that can do a scenario for me. See if you can't talk with training or whoever is in charge of the practice. And I'm talking about beforehand and not just short kind of showing up last minute and saying, here's an idea. But see if you can have them run through a scenario so that you can see it too. You may say, can we do a not on the track point scenario? Because I'll tell you what, because I know a lot of you are skaters too, it's good to practice these things, to know how you're supposed to react to them in the moment when they happen, as well as an official, what you're supposed to do with that as well.
Yeah, I highly encourage you to advocate for yourself at practice, right? It's your practice too.
it kind of better simulates what, like, it helps everybody just kind of take the edge off of game day. Like when you have whistles at practice, or when you have a penalty box and timers at practice, or if you're lucky enough, if you can have a scoreboard up or some kind of, we sometimes have folks just filling out paperwork. We don't have to get the whole scoreboard or the projector screen up, but just for jam refs to practice that, how many points were there? I have somebody else that I need to check in with. Comparing the scores just to make sure that everybody's following along, or you can learn how to address issues when it happens at practice and hopefully not on game day, but it's good to
manufacture the issues to make sure that you practice them.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no problem that you can't make worse. So so it's like exposure therapy for everybody to just like, if the point of practice is to get to game day, then that applies to everybody. Also, bench staff, asking for an official review in the most like officially way possible. That'll just increase your chances of having an official review perhaps go in your favor.
Yeah, if you know the lingo, you can ask for more articulate what you're looking for. The other thing is too, and I think for a lot of folks who maybe are in this like intermediate section of officiating where you've done a lot and you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough. It's like, one, you probably are. Two, the thing that might be holding you back is the confidence in it of like, I've never seen this scenario. And because I've never seen this scenario, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm lacking the confidence to feel like I could handle it. That's what the practice is for. So that you can have the mistakes that happen. And then when you get to a real life scenario, you're able to draw on that experience to handle that confidently. I will say this too. Roller derby, well, we all love it dearly. It's a sport that we all are doing as a volunteer organization. We're allowed to make mistakes and we will all do our best to fix them. So please don't put yourself on such a pedestal that you're like, ah, even at big tournaments and postseason and champs, mistakes happen. The expertise comes in with staying calm and working together. So those are the two biggest things. So we're going to talk about trips. We're going to focus more on that specifically. As we go in to this, we will open up Nerd Space to go over some of this more. So I'm going to talk for a couple of slides and then we'll open up going into some scenarios there. So your initial trip, so this is the trip where lead is established, starts at the jam starting whistle. that trip ends, or it can end when the jammer exits the front of the engagement zone. Now, that trip can also end when the jam ends. That has happened where a jammer will just get stuck in a scrum the entire time. They'll never get close to exiting the front of that engagement zone. And because of that, when the jam ends, that is also the end of that trip as well. But presuming that the jam is on and that they are making headway, when they have passed everybody and they get out of that top of the engagement zone, they've ended their first trip. However, remember that lead jammer is assigned as soon as it's eligible to be able to get it. So if you pass all the blockers, uprights, inbounds, and you're within the field of play, the engagement zone, you get lead. And you get lead as soon as you pass that last foremost blocker, having met all those other requirements. So you will probably be giving lead to somebody before they exit the engagement zone. Sometimes it happens where jammer is tucked into that blocker. They're pushing up to the end of the engagement zone. The pushing ends up going out of the engagement zone. You hear that ref called out of play in the front. Jammer, as soon as that out of play is called, because that means that the last foremost blocker is behind us now, right? Blocker in front of us is out of play. They're no longer the foremost in play blocker. That person is behind us. Jam referee, tweet, as soon as that out of play in the front is called. We will go over that scenario again in Nerd Space, I promise. So on our second trip, we've exited that engagement zone. We're starting our second trip to come around. We're going to be in our scoring trip. So jam referee, we've got our lead hand signal going with, we're showing our L for lead and we're pointing, which is what lets the jammer next to us know that they have lead. Once we exit that trip, we can't go back in regards to scoring. So as long as we're still within that engagement zone, we're able to get points. But as soon as we exit it, once you exit trip one, you cannot go back to get points. However, you can always get sucked back into that previous trip. So let's say jammer gets out, is like feeling great, feeling good, and skate malfunction. Like their shoelaces literally just kind of get stuck in their wheels. They fall. They still have lead in this scenario. The pack catches back up to them. They've returned back to trip one. If we were on a scoring trip, we would be talking about points. Right now, we're talking about the initial. You don't undo lead at that point because once you get it, you got it. And the same thing works for points. So let's pretend that we're on the second trip now, all right? Jammer gets out, gets lead, comes through, passes. Let's say they only pass 3 blockers. We've got a no orange pass somewhere in there, right? And the jammer exits the front of the engagement zone. So we've got 3 points. We're holding up 3 points for our scorekeeper to see. Jammer's shoelace gets stuck in their skates. Jammer goes down. Right in this moment, when we're outside of the engagement zone, we are in trip 3. Pack comes back up, recaptures the jammer. We go back into trip 2. However, our 3 points are locked in for trip 2. Even though we missed a blocker somehow, we cannot change that to 4. We're not coming back up with 4. Once we start a new trip, we can't go back in regards to scoring. The points earned in that trip can no longer be changed, even if the jammer gets drawn back. Trip 2 ends. So jammer gets up, continues trying, exits the top of the engagement zone. As soon as they exit that engagement zone, they go into 3. So we go from 2 into 3 as long as that happens. The end of the last trip. So we keep scoring, we keep going until we get to the end of our last trip, which is the end of our ability to earn points, which is either the 4 whistles that comes from our jam timer to end the 2 minutes, if we've gotten to 2 minutes, or if the lead jammer calls off the jam, the first set of 4 whistles, tweet, 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 tweet. This very last tweet is the end of when points are able to be given. So we can earn points up to that moment, but not after that moment. And that ends our last trip. The other time you might hear it is with an official timeout or something that goes on where we have to end the jam very suddenly. So in this example, because I've got some really great questions that I see popping up in the chat, when you come out of trip 2 with our 3 points, right? And we're holding up 3 points for all the world to see for our scorekeepers, and my hand vanishes as soon as I put it over here, for all of our scorekeepers to be able to see. We are also on trip 3. We're also holding this imaginary 0 that nobody can see, because this is the important thing, right? This is what we want the audience to see. This is what we want the scorekeepers to see. But let's say that we're not lead jammer. The other person is the lead jammer. We just got 3 and we're trying to get more points before the end. Jam gets called. What I will do as a jam referee is that I will continue to show 3 for just a little bit, and then I'll catch my scorekeeper's eye and I'll flash to 0. So it'll be like 3 and then 0, 3, 0, and I'll end on the 0, because this 0 is my third trip. I've got 3 on my second trip, and I've got 0 on my third trip. We will also call this a trailing 0. This is a really great example of something that I consider to be a sign of like someone who's a lot of experience in roller derby, to show off this trailing 0, and for a scorekeeper to also designate that this trailing 0 has happened on their paperwork, because stats are important. If we're looking at the stats book, the jammers want to know how many laps have I done and what's my scoring differential for those. It plays into that as well. You don't always have to go over to the score table afterwards to double confirm a trailing 0. If you do forget it, you can. Because we've only got that 30 seconds in between, it's good to try to be efficient with what your body's energy is doing instead of like running across the track. Because remember, visually, like officials are visually a part of the game as well. If you have a jammer that's consistently getting trailing 0s and you're running back and forth between the score table, everyone's like, is everything okay? Is everything going okay? So that's part of that communication to work out in the beginning, where you can say to your scorekeeper, hey, if I have a trailing 0, I might do something like this and end here, and that's that 0 for you. Or you can just kind of be like, I will hold up 3 and I will look at you with a nod and hold up a separate hand for a 0 for you to have it. There's a couple of different ways here that you can do it. For the engagement zone, easy, not so easy. So if the scoring trip is defined by the engagement zone, what happens with a no pack? So we define our engagement zone from the nucleus of the pack. The most people that are all together, the foremost person and the rearmost person make the 20 feet that make our engagement zone. However, in a no pack, when we have something that's happened where we can't define a pack, that engagement zone does not technically vanish. It's technically still there. The rules say in section 3.2, no pack can be defined when the jammer is more than 20 feet ahead of the foremost inbounds member of the previous pack. That's the edge. So let's have a visual for it in a different way. I've got a no pack scenario here in my visual. I've actually got a split pack, so that's a no pack scenario. Blocker 2, yellow 2, is my foremost pack skater, and the engagement zone was created from them when there was still a pack. So with no pack, we're going to imagine that we still have that 20 feet of engagement, and that's important for our scoring trip. We always have to have something to reference when it comes to our scoring trip. So let's put the jammer in the back of the pack. Let me actually, how much further is my nerd space? It is on the next one. Let's go and get it now. All right, so we've got our jammer in the front. We've got our no pack situation here. Let's pretend that our jammer is actually in the back. There's still this imaginary 20 feet of engagement zone that is happening here for coming up to the front. The reason why I think this is important, because as a jam referee, you should be holding up your points for most of the engagement zone. I usually do it from the start of the engagement zone. So from here, I'll hold up my 4 points, going all the way around to the 20 feet in the back. Sometimes it'll go down a little bit sooner, depending on if there's something happening or something coming from the box, or I'll lose my balance. But that engagement zone is still happening here. And that's important, because if I pass somebody, if I'm the yellow jammer and I pass somebody in the back during this no pack situation, I still get this point, right? We still have an engagement zone. We're still able to kind of figure out where everything is going. All right, jammers do not get free points in a no pack because there's no engagement zone. They don't just automatically get 4 points as soon as a no pack is called within that, right? Inbounds and out of bounds. So we've established that the jammer needs to be able to exit the engagement zone, and that we're exiting the engagement zone at the front. But there are kind of a few ways that you can exit when that happens. So this is why having an earned pass, those abilities to get points, and the trip are separated. So you can, as a jammer, we'll go back to nurse space in a second, can as a jammer slide on your knees past the foremost blocker. You would have a unearned pass because you are not upright, so you wouldn't get the point, but you would exit the engagement zone. You could be hit out of bounds forward by a blocker, and then that blocker then goes out of play, and then you as a jammer can come back in. That goes into our no earned pass category. And at that point, you have essentially been hit out on your trip 2, and then you would be coming back in on trip 3 above that engagement zone line. You could be hit by a blocker and their teammate, and then both blockers go out of bounds, and then the jammer would come back in. There's some technicalities that we are going to talk about because the non-initiator is very important. So per 4.2.2, if a skater is put out of bounds due to an opponent's block, so that's our superior position that we talk about, the skater must return inbounds behind that opponent, even if the skater was in front of the opponent before being blocked. So we are, we'll stay with yellow. Let's make a pack. That's fine. Here, let's go back to our sliding on the knee scenario. So at the very beginning, they're fighting at the engagement zone at the very top, and the yellow jammer falls and slides on their knees past green one. Green one stays in bounds the entire time. This is not an earned pass, so we're not getting a point here. So as a jammer, if we're holding up 3 points, as long as, I'm going to save that, we're going to pretend it's just 3 points. It's too many rabbit holes. So slide on your knees past this top person, we hold up 3 points. So even if the jammer is like, oh no, my person, I didn't get them, and goes back and then passes them again, we cannot return to that trip. We've already crossed this magical line that is here of our engagement zone. So we are locked in. So we can slide on our knees. The next one that we had is that the blocker hits us out. So the blocker goes, meh. And as the blocker does it, jammer goes out of play, or jammer goes out of bounds, and the blocker goes out of play. So this blocker needs to stop. The rules don't force the blocker to go backwards. In most cases, there's an asterisk there. We're not going to get into it. The jammer can come in front of this blocker, and the jammer can come in front of the initiator, even if the initiator returns to the engagement zone. Once the initiator loses superior position, they don't get it back. So the jammer can come back in here. So let's answer this question before we go back into this very complicated scenario. If they slide past the blocker on their knees, go back to, give me an engagement zone, on their knees in the engagement zone, they can go back and pass them again and earn their points. So, aha, yes. So if we're still here and yellow jammer is like, I'm free, I'm escaping, trip fall. And they trip fall here. They slide past the blocker. And then they stand up. And before they exit, they go, wait, my point. And they go back and they pass the blocker. Yes, they do get 4 because they never exited this line. So as long as that we are here, we're doing all those shenanigans within the engagement zone, we can still go back and get it. But the minute that we exit, we're locked in. That's it. No more. All right. The other thing to consider is that if a jammer is running for their life and at this very moment, they start to fall and they land here. So they land in front of the blocker. You are up until you are down, and you are not down until both those knees hit the ground. So a falling jammer can still get points. Yeah, because upright, you are upright until you have both hands touching or one knee or other larger body part. It's in the glossary. I'm not going to do semantics right now for that, but a falling jammer can still get that point. A sliding jammer can still get this point as long as they go back to get it, but a sliding jammer that exits the engagement zone, slide 3, not 4, or whatever the number is, because you can have more shenanigans that happen. Okay, we did the sliding on the knees, we did the blocker being hit. Okay, we're going to go back to being mean. So oh, this is a good one too. Before we get into the really mean one, I want to make sure this is also the time for questions too. If a jammer slides past the blocker and the blocker is now, I'm going to say the whole question, then we'll break it down. If a jammer slides past the blocker and blocker is now outside the engagement zone, the reason the jammer doesn't have to recycle is because the blocker is outside the engagement zone. Hopefully the question makes sense. So what I'm understanding this to be is that if the jammer slides past the blocker here, if this blocker exits the engagement zone, I think that's what your question is.
Yes, I think that's right.
If the blocker exits, the reason the jammer doesn't have to recycle is because the blocker is outside the engagement zone. Not quite, because our trip is already ended. Our trip ends, the jammer's trip ends when we pass that engagement zone line. If this would qualify for the next trip, right? The blocker is now outside the engagement zone. It can qualify for that point on the next trip. This would only qualify as being a point you would have already earned if this blocker is out of play and then the jammer exits. So that goes into our, it's called scoring avoidance, or that automatically earned pass. They already have to be outside of the engagement zone for us to get that point for free. But because we had this chance, we have had this chance, even though it's just mostly physics that has harmed us at this point, we've had this chance to earn this point. Once we cross this line, we can't go back to get it. And we don't get it still, even if this blocker goes out of play. It's really unfortunate, but that is kind of how that stinks up. So I hope that I answered your question. Very good question there. Okay, I'm going to start to set up for my really mean scenario now where I break everybody's brains. Okay. Lynn, I like how you like evil, like mastermind every time that we get here. Okay, so
Yeah, I'm learning stuff too.
It's all good. That's, if you ever stop learning in roller derby, you were required to automatically retire because you apparently know everything and you're good and it's all perfect. And so go out on top. There's no such thing as a perfect game. I almost had 400 of them. There's no such thing as a perfect game. And if you do have it, retire. So blocker 1 is going to be our initiator. Blocker 2 is our not initiator. So here we're back into 4.2 again. All right. Blocker 1 hits out yellow jammer. And in the process, all of them are going, we're doing it together. The red circles mean that we're all out of bounds and we're all unhappy.
Oh, no.
There's a couple of different scenarios here, so hang with me. If the jammer in this exact moment comes back in and we have not previously passed these other skaters, actually, it wouldn't be like that because the jammer was in front of both of them. So we want to do this instead. We're gonna redo it. So jammer has not passed these 2 blockers yet. And so gets hit out of bounds. They all go out of bounds though. And the jammer goes, I'm free. And then exits. We have a no earned pass on 2. And we are holding up 2 points. So the way this would look to your scorekeepers, you hold up 2 and then you go, the reason is this. 2, my reason is this. I'm saying it like a robot with this cadence because we get so amped up with our bodies as we're officiating. We get more control back when we slow our bodies down. So 2, my reason why. 2, my reason why. Usually it looks something more like this because usually we only know pass 1. However, this is why this scenario is mean. Have not passed either yet. Everybody goes out on the train like this. Blocker 1 and blocker 2 get back onto the track before the jammer, and the jammer is planning to come up here. Now, blocker 1 or initiator has lost superior position. So if blocker 2 isn't a part of this equation and the jammer comes in, it's good. It's good. Now, we would have a no earned pass because this blocker went out of bounds, and we wouldn't be in a cut, like in the danger of cut. However, blocker 2, the devil that is 4.2.2, blocker 2 is a non-initiator, and non-initiators, G's laughing, non-initiators get back their superior position. So blocker 2 is the one that the jammer needs to worry about. So if this jammer comes in and goes, I'm free, they will quickly hear tweet and get these, because this is a cut on blocker 2. It's not a cut on blocker 1. It's cut on the non-initiator. I cannot tell you the number of jammers of all ages, juniors in particular love to ignore this rule, will just cut a lot of folks because there's a non-initiator that's involved in what the action is. So with this, if we're gonna, let's put this into the points perspective, right? So do, and then blocker 1 and 2 comes back, we come back in. We're not getting either of these points. We have a no earned pass on both. We have not had that lap, that double passing of hits happen yet to be able to accrue the points to have our earned pass. Those are all of our keywords we've talked about earlier. However, we then kind of put on a different officiating hat because now we're talking about a position penalty. We're talking about the cut penalty. This jammer still has the ability to cede. It's not automatic cut. So the jammer can go, oops, so sorry, and come back in and then pass. And then we do get those points, right? We do get that earned pass. So this is part of that having to pay attention to who you pass when and where. So 4.2.2, the opponent that is the initiator of contact gives up the advantage if they go down, out of bounds, out of play. So we could have this same scenario happening here at the top where the jammer is pushing. They both go out of play. And then 2 and 1 go back with this. They should have hit them out. So they all go out of play. 2 and 1 go back. 2 can get back their superior position. 1 cannot. If the jammer comes in and keeps going, it is a cut. So
Addie, a great question in our Q&A. Somebody said, but if that blocker made contact, if the blocker contact was pushed into it by their teammate, is the pusher the initiator or is it the actual skater who hits the jammer?
We're going to go down this very tiny rabbit hole.
This is a tiny one.
If you have other questions, throw them in now because we're going to move from this conversation here in a moment. This is a very good point. So the initiator of contact is the one that actually, I don't like to use contact like as the descriptor because it's like, oh, they made contact with my body. It's like, well, we're talking about contact in terms of like, what is the, sorry, I'm using the wrong word. I'm thinking of impact, not contact. For contact, it's literally who touches who. So because blocker 1, go back here, get away from my lines to make it clear. Because blocker 2 is never technically touching the jammer, blocker 1 is the one touching the jammer. And so that is the initiator of contact of that action. Now, if blocker 2 is here and it both was a unified force of them pushing out the jammer together, they are both initiating contact against the jammer. And so they both could lose their superior position if they do it at the same time, which has happened because Derby is weird. But if blocker 1 pits and then blocker 2 is just here and blocker 1 finishes it, blocker 2 is the non-initiator. So the non-initiator is who is a part of that action, but who has not touched the jammer to cause them to go down, out of bounds, out of play. So very, very good question. So blocker 2 can push their friend and push that friend into the jammer to have them go off. And then blocker 2 is able to do whatever it is that they want to do. So very good question. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, this is good strategy to know for blockers and jammers.
Learn the rules. Everybody needs to know the rules. I swear, it's so good. It makes you better at Derby. If you understand the nuances, it makes you better at Derby. It's hard to have the track awareness, to have all those things happen. But that's what practice is for. If you practice it enough, your brain will speed up and get it. So we will get there all together. Okay, into the matrix.
Right, we're going into the matrix. Going into the matrix. So I think a misconception about especially jam reffing is that you are in charge of all the points. It's a team effort to make sure that points are tracked across the whole entire crew. So jam refs obviously have the best viewpoint position. It's in their job description that they're going to track and record those points and signal them to their scorekeeper. But if your jammer's on the outside line and there's a whole bunch of blockers in front, you can't always see whose hips were where. And that's where OPRs, you can come into play and really save the day with confusing questions or just helping your jam ref make sure that points were earned as precisely as possible. So when I line up in between at the 30 seconds, I'm scanning the pack. Let's say I have red jammer that I'm keeping track of. I'm going to look at all the blue blockers and kind of see if there's other details I can pick out, like, oh, this helmet has a whole lot of stickers, or they got super sparkly pants or stripy socks, so that I can have a little bit of backup information so that when everybody's swirling around and when those walls are breaking and reforming and coming together and there's runbacks, I can have a little bit of extra peace of mind that I'm like, okay, they passed stripy socks for sure. So now I just got to get sparkle pants to have that last point. It can also be, instead of thinking of it as adding points, you can think of it as subtracting as well. It's like, all right, they got those two, subtract. Now I'm going to make sure that these two remaining skaters that haven't had those points, those are the ones that I'm keeping track of for points reasons. Also having, like Lorraine of Terror has on the back, having some little somatic reminders, information stored in your body of how many points are scored. So if the jam ends for whatever reason, natural cause, or if there's an injury, you have that backup stored in your body, in your hands of 3. There were 3 points there. So what happens when your jammer gets a penalty in the thick of it all? So they're scoring pauses in that trip when they commit the penalty and not when it is called, because sometimes there's a late call, or if the jammer does some tricky stuff in the back of the pack, has that cut, and the OPR needs to take a second, or fumbling with a whistle or just the venue is really loud and you have to play hot potato, telephone that penalty across the whole crew. Keeping in mind, if your jammer had only passed one person when that cut happened and they escape out the front, if you need to check with your OPRs too, after the jam is called, to be like, when you saw the penalty and when it was called, just help me realize where those points were so that we can make it as accurate as possible. And keep in mind any blockers that they haven't passed when they get back from the box. So if the cut happens, whatever penalty happens in the beginning of the jam, and then let's say lead is lost, so it's going to be a 2-minute jam, keep track of who your jammer has already passed, because they'll still be able to score points when they come back on the track. Pay attention to the penalty box. Is an opponent entering that they haven't passed, and could it be a not point? Also, if penalties get called, if there's a blocker in front of your jammer and they get a high block penalty, as soon as they have that penalty called on them, they are not in play anymore. They might still be on the track, but they are not in play. So if the jam were to end at that moment, just making sure that if you heard other penalties being called, to check in with those other refs of where were these skaters positioned, or if they're on their way to the box, they're not on the track at that point. Also good to remember that you've got penalty trackers and lineup trackers in the middle too, so that you can check in with them and be like, let me see who exactly numbers and penalties, so that it's a cross officiating task to make sure that points are counted accurately and correctly, depending on who is where.
And then, do you want to be a nerd real quick?
Yeah, I'm about to be a nerd.
Let's go be a nerd. Okay, what would you like for me to move the little dots around on for you?
Ooh, let's see. Okay, let's focus on green jammer in the back, coming up on blocker 3. And let's say that if the green pivot and yellow blocker 2 are tussling, doing some offense, and then yellow blocker hits somebody in the face and they get a high block, they are ahead of that green jammer. They're going to go to the box. So if the jam were to end while that yellow blocker was still in the box, just making sure that you check who's sitting in the box or who's on the way to the box, so that you can add those points if need be.
Yep. So we pass blocker 3. We have what engages are not on the track point to incur here, and then we've got this guy over in the box to be able to pick up. Right.
We had that question of 2. Yes, say the jammer's on trip 2, they score 2 points, they get a penalty. When they return, they still are on trip 2 with those 2 points. Yes. So that's when it's really important to remember who did they pass? There can be a little bit of etch-a-sketch brain when penalties come out, especially for skaters. When they hear that long whistle, everybody's mind just kind of goes blank for a second. Or if you're the one calling the penalty and you have your eyes off of whatever you were looking at to make sure that the penalty gets issued, recognized, properly acknowledged, just making sure that you take that second to quickly take a snapshot. My jammer passed these two players. When they come back on the track, they still have a chance to pass those other players to get a full four. And a situation that I have a lot when jammers go to the box and then they can come back on the track to pick up those extra points. They might not break out of the engagement zone. They might get stuck on trip 2, let's say. But as the wall is churning, switching around, they might pick up all 4 of those points, but never complete that trip.
So let me show that last one before we go over sort of the cut scenario that's inside of here. So if there's sort of this general scrum that's happening at the top, so let's say that yellow jammer is in the box, we don't have to worry about them. And in this scrum, green jammer gets yellow 3, but then yellow 3 goes back up and they start to engage here, and then green jammer passes yellow 2 and yellow pivot. So even though the pivot goes out of bounds, as long as the jammer is inbounds and upright, we still get that point. So they can go out of bounds. So we've got 3 points. So our pocket point hand next to us is holding on to 3. And we're trying to be like, sparkly pants, sparkly pants. I need sparkly pants. Sparkly pants is yellow 1. And then we all kind of shift and move around again. There's stuff that happens. We fall down. We have to see. We go back here. Have not gotten sparkle pants 1 yet, right? Kind of come up here. Sparkle pants runs up for something that's here. We come back. We finally go through here. Sparkle pants is like, I'm going to go and do this thing against green 3 for some reason. When sparkle pants runs backwards, they give up their earned pass by going past the jammer. And so at that point, we've got 4 points, but we don't hold these up yet until we exit that engagement zone to lock in our trip. So that's what Lynn was saying with, you can be in the scrum and in the mix, and it takes a minute sometimes to kind of get past everybody. It's not always super clean. All right, I want to go over the cut scenario that's inside of this one here really quick, because I see this a lot. And there's a reason why we didn't call this entire webinar like how to jam ref, because it's not. It's how to do scoring. Because for this scenario, me as a back IPR, when I'm a head ref, I will pick up on this scenario as well, because sometimes the jam ref is right on top of the line. They don't see something. It can happen to the outside. The OPR can see it. So scoring is a team sport. It really is. Jam ref is coming up. Jammer's coming up. Jammer passes 2. As they're passing 2 and they pass 2 inbounds, 2 gives them a solid shoulder hit that hits them out. They think that they stay in. They do some toe stop work, but actually one toe stop goes just over the line. They think that they stay in, but they don't. And they come back in and they try to get these 2 points. At this point, the OPR would call the cut call, hopefully. So if that cut call happens, the OPR, if it's not clear to the jam referee, because let's pretend that this is happening. If there is a wall of people that we cannot see through when we are jam refereeing, you don't know nothing. That OPR has got all the cards. So going through here, jammer goes to the box. Let's say that the jam ends. We want to go and talk with the OPR to figure out what happened when, because they're the one that has the most information.
Usually if I'm jam reffing and my jammer that I'm tracking is on the outside line, I'll keep an eye on the top in case there's any high blocks or stuff going on. But I'll also look at the OPR that's closest to see if they have scrunchy face or if they're nodding their head like, yes, they're staying in bounds. So that kind of mental, like, it feels like telekinesis sometimes when you're like me and G, if you're OPRing and I'm jam reffing, it's a very satisfying, like, we're tracking this jammer together. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll also help take the pressure off of, like, no ref is an island. You don't have your own bubble that you exist in. It's a very connected network across gameplay.
Yeah. And now you're getting that official warning before you're in a game as an OPR, and a jam ref just suddenly strides across the track and comes to you and says, how many points? Right? Because it will happen. And now as an OPR, you know, okay, I should be looking for those points as well.
And OPRs, if you know that you've got the cards, don't wait. Please don't wait for your JMRF to come over, because the JMRF may not be thinking that you've got anything. Go and offer to say, hey, I saw this. Does that match what you saw? And they go, yeah. And then you're all better for it. And you've handled it in less than 30 seconds and you go back and everybody's happy. One thing to note when we're talking about points is that we don't want to hold up points as soon as we get them, right? We want to hold up points once we have exited our trip and that we're here. Usually, like, we want to kind of do it when we're pretty sure that we're going to get out. If the pack is actually, for some reason, very far back, and we have an engagement zone that is very short as we're getting our last couple, nope. There we go. As we're getting our last couple of points that are here, you don't have to throw up 4 points immediately. You can take a breath, see if something else happens here, but you don't want to be waiting to hold up points all the way over here or over here. So unless, like, we're looking at an image right now, the image is stagnant, it's not moving. So usually the pack is also chasing your jammer, so the engagement zone is also creeping up as well. Hold them up when you are sure and a little bit out of the danger zone, but try not to wait too long. All of these things are going to kind of be dependent on the scenario. But if you can, hold them up once you get out of that engagement zone. Okay, once you get out, you're holding up your points for the entire time that the jammer is going around the track. I usually put mine down about 25 feet from the back, because by the time that my hand is down, I'm hitting the back of that edge of the engagement zone.
All right. So into the penalty box. What's going to happen when your jammer commits a penalty and they are now in the penalty box? What should you be doing? So when the jammer exits the box, they are returning to the trip they were previously on, and they retain the points they already earned. We actually had a question in our Q&A about that, asking, hey, if they had 2 points and they went to the box, do they get to keep those 2 points if the jam ends? Yes, they get to keep any points that were earned before the penalty was committed, and they still retain those points if they return to play. So if a jammer commits a penalty on their initial trip, they'll return from the box on their initial trip until they exit the front of the engagement zone. So the jammer goes to the box on their initial trip, they come back on their initial trip, even if they are entering again, maybe in the back of the pack, right? They've still got to get through the entire pack, through exit out in front of that engagement zone to complete their initial trip. All right, what happens if your jammer is in the box at the end of the jam? So like we said, their scoring trip ends, the points they earned during that scoring trip were reported. So other points that are not yet earned are not gained, right? So if your jammer is in the box and let's say they've earned those 2 points before they earned their penalty, they passed, they got 2 earned passes, they did earn those 2 points, but a jammer, say, maybe removes themselves from play to fix a scoring equipment issue. If your jammer was in play, they could pick up that extra not on the track point. But since they're in the penalty box, they can't pick up any extra points that you may see that are not on the track points. Right? You have to be upright and in bounds to earn points. Can't be upright and in bounds if you're sitting in a penalty box chair. Here's our question. We said the jammer awards 4 points as a jammer exits the engagement zone. An OPR calls a late cut track penalty that happened in the middle of the trip. So sometimes this happens. We're trying to communicate that there was a cut. You're waving your hands frantically, and your jammer referee just doesn't see you, right? So you might skate up, make eye contact with them, and say, hey, there was a cut track, right? Let's say we get that cut track penalty established, right? We get that called, but then the jam ends. What should you do next? What do we think we should do next? Do we think the jammer gets those 4 points? Should we confer with somebody and see how many points they get? What do you guys think? Oh, someone said confer with the OPR.
Like it.
Talk to your OPR about when they saw the cut and how many points the OPR saw. You're on the right track, right? Go confer with your OPR, see how many points they saw. So maybe your OPR witnessed that the track cut occurred after the jammer had passed 2 in-play blockers and earned 2 points. That cut track occurred. They came back, the jammer came back on the track and then passed 2 more blockers that were still in the engagement zone, right? We awarded them 4 points as the jammer referee, but really they only earned 2. So by conferring with our OPR, we can figure out, okay, where did that cut track penalty happen? How many points do you think that they earned? How many points did I witness? Right? We can kind of talk from there. So remember, the jammer stops earning points as soon as the penalty is committed, whether or not that communication actually occurs late, right? So even though that communication is not happening until after our jammer has passed 4 blockers, their points are not picked up. They stop earning points as soon as that penalty is committed. Right? The kind of sticky, ticky-tacky part is that the OPR has to have clear information on when the cut happened and where, right? If the jammer has been stuck for a long time, there's a very real chance that they had already earned those passes. So you might actually have already earned those 4 points, right? But it's a messier, less direct situation, not the one I think we're really talking about or asking about.
I think it's also good to have the IPRs as a backup since they are pulled off the line. They might have that, especially since they're really tuned into where's the pack, how is it constructed. They can help give that extra backup information of when that cut happened, OPR, when you say it happened, this is what the pack looked like at that point.
Yeah. And Samantha, echoing what G said there at the end in the Q&A of, you don't know what happened in that scenario and if they already had those blockers that were passed and you earned that point. To answer Scott's question, so this is the distinction between earning points and then position-based penalties, right? So Scott's question is, just to be clear, when a jammer passes the 2 blockers and then gets knocked out, they still have to come back in behind those 2 blockers. Let's go be a nerd. So we've got our 2 blockers that are here, will be a yellow jammer. And so I pass these two blockers legally, but then 3 hits me out. Do I still have to come in behind them? Yes, when it comes to a cut penalty. No, when it comes to points. So I get these 2 points as soon as I pass their hips, we're locked in. However, if I get hit out by 3, we then go in to a different land of roller derby. So that's just why we talk about points separately from position-based penalties. So very good question there.
Yeah, especially if the blockers are paying attention and they try to draw the cut or make that super quick run back. Usually as a jammer, I just play it safe and I'm like, you know what? I don't really know who I was in front of or behind when I got knocked out. I know I got their points, but I don't want to go sit in the box for 30 seconds. So I'll take myself out and recycle.
So let's say that we recognize that we've got something going on with points, right? Our points that we gave to our scorekeeper, maybe they aren't reflected on the scoreboard. Maybe we're having a scoreboard malfunction. Maybe a scorekeeper was like taking down a note about something, a star pass, and missed a pass. So we're missing a scoring pass within all of our trips. Sorry, a scoring trip within all of our trips that's going on. What are the rules around making changes to the scoreboard? So the scoreboard can be changed. Errors may be corrected no later than the end of the jam after the one in which the error occurred. So we're talking about section 3.5. This means that if I'm in jam 7 and I realize in jam 7 that there's something that's going wrong, and I can kind of like flash points to my scorekeeper to be like, hey, it's 12. Maybe we can fix it inside of the jam that's occurring right now. But usually what happens is that it's the end of the jam, you're holding up points, you're thinking, oh, I had 3 passes of 4, so that's 12. And you look at the scoreboard and you only see 8. And you're like, hey, I had 12. Did you have 12? And the scorekeeper's like, oh, sorry, they get 12, and you update it in between jams. We're still good. Let's say that we're in jam 8, that we're inside of that next jam and we're able to have some communication back and forth. This one is trickier and harder because there can be more of a miscommunication that happens. So the first 2 are preferred. And if you're in the second one, if you're in the in-between and you are running out of time, you have a special instrument around your neck. It's called a whistle. Make a timeout, pretty please, pretty please. When we talk about taking timeouts, try to take that timeout closer to 30 seconds than to 5 seconds. Use as much of that time as you can to try to remedy the problem quickly. But if you're getting too close to that end of that 30 seconds, please call it. I would prefer that you take a timeout and fix it in between jams than the kerfuffle that will happen if you try to take care of it during the next jam. Usually this last bullet point is more for scorekeepers and scoreboard operators. A scorekeeper recognizes that on their paperwork, they have 12, they check their points from last time on the scoreboard, they can see the screen, they go, hey, wait a second, you got to go up 4. And that's usually where that communication is happening. Because for you to look at your scorekeeper after one scoring trip of 4 to be like 8, they're going to be like, my scorekeepers had an aneurysm, my gym referees had an aneurysm, and they don't know what they're talking about anymore. So first 2 are more for us here. If the scoreboard is correct, but the scorekeeper's written record is incorrect, they can still fix it. The scoreboard is the official score of the game. That's what stands. And so the scorekeeper can update that. I highly encourage you to go back and watch the YouTube footage for the NSO portion of this to see the behind the scenes on that. So our example here, the gym referee shows 3 points and the scorekeeper writes down 4, but the scoreboard correctly recorded 3 points. The scorekeeper can change the scoring paperwork and the official score that is on the scoreboard is good. And we're all set. But Addie, what happens if the scoreboard's not okay? Hey, that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. When the score cannot be changed is at the end of that next jam. So if after the end of jam 2 and our error happened in jam 1 and we are at the middle between jam 2 and jam 3, we are past the point of no return. We cannot change that scoreboard time. We're not able to do it. We're not able to change that score because it's after that next jam. So if it's in the last 2 minutes of each period, scoring errors must be corrected before the start of that next jam. This is because usually that is such a critical time in the game where things are like happening and bench coaches are making decisions and you know, you could win or lose a game in the last 2 minutes sometimes. So we don't want to assist in a miscommunication on the board. So that's when it becomes super critical to have that in between time, to take that time out, the official timeout in between, to make sure that we're fixing it before we really can't fix it. So if we're in jam 25 and we have 45 seconds left on the clock and there is an error that happened in jam 24, and it's the end of jam 25, we can't fix it anymore because we're less than 2 minutes. For errors for points awarded correctly, section 3.5, points awarded or denied correctly, given the information available at the time, may not be taken away or awarded later. So here's our example. A jammer has yet to pass the opposing pivot when the jam ends. Let's be a nerd. Hold on, let me go get my handy dandy pop-up window.
I love it.
Okay,
Yay,
jammer has yet to
nerd.
pass the opposing pivot. Here's my opposing pivot. Here's my yellow jammer. We are up here, so I've got 3 points. I don't have 4 yet. And we come out here. So jammer has yet to pass the opposing pivot, and the jam ends. Jam ref awards 3 points. What we don't know is that there's a late call that's being assessed to this pivot. And so jam referee turns towards the scoreboard, is holding up 3 for the scoreboard, holding up 3 for the audience, maybe gets a drink of water. The OPR gives the cut call to the pivot. Pivot goes over to the box. Jam ref thinks that, hey, we're all set. I'm good. They're good. Scoreboard's like, hey, we're good. The jam referee lines up for the next jam. The next jam starts. And that information just never gets back. We just never connect the dots on that. It happens. Then maybe a couple of jams later, a bench coach is like, didn't this happen? And I have 1 more point. We can't do anything about it now. We awarded the points for that, and that time has passed and it is away. So assessing penalties timely, if we can't always. Assessing penalties timely is very important, but also the additional communication. Because here's how we change that scenario. OPR gives the pivot that penalty. Sees the jam referee holding up 3. OPR goes over to the jam ref. Hey, I just put the pivot that you didn't pass yet into the box. You get that point. Jam referee says, thank you. We change it to 4. And then we're all set, right? Because that becomes a not on the track point, even though we hadn't earned that pass yet, because that blocker is going to the box, we get it now. Speaking of communication.
Middle of the jam communication. What's happening in the thick of it all when mental bandwidth is being taxed? How can you best provide that info as quickly as possible to your other refs, to your scorekeepers? Whistles, signaling lead clearly, both physically and with your whistle. Sometimes we get a little too excited with our whistles, and depending on the venue, if it's really not sound friendly, 2 whistles can sound like 1 whistle. And then there's a little bit of confusion from jammer, from refs. So having that, it's better to have a little bit too much space with your tweet than not enough. So it takes some practice to get the right two whistle blast. But also with your L, keeping some feedback that I got when my early jam ref days is I would kind of hold it like this next to me, a little cocked arm. So trying to hold your L as high in the sky as you can, depending on shoulders or body limitations. Signaling not lead correctly. Oftentimes I'll see newer jam refs signaling not lead way up here, and that can sometimes be confused for a track cut. So try to keep your hands below hip level, kind of down, pointing towards the ground. And your clear call off whistles, so they're not garbled as well. Having that nice clear tweet, 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 like Adam's Family kind of thing. Tweet, 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 tweet. It takes practice for across the officiating crew as well to really have a nice, clean, together set of call-off whistles. But if you are calling off the jam, if your jammers lead and they're trying to call it, having a nice, clear, calm tweet, 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 tweet will set everybody up for success. Positioning, where the jam ref is, tells everyone roughly where the jammer is. Making sure that you can see those stars, or if there's a star pass that might be going south, if things are getting a little wonky. If your jammer is close to the inside line, generally you want to kind of keep eyeballs from hips down so you can see what's going on the line with contact. OPRs will kind of shift to what's going on up above so you can see high blocks, multiplayers, and then the opposite when your jammer's way out on the outside line. OPRs are kind of shifting down, making sure that feet are staying in bounds, any low blocks happening. So when your jammer is way over there on the outside, just trying to keep as best of a view as possible. At the start of the jam, just check in and see where those walls are positioned. So if your opposing wall is forward a little bit and your red jammer can just kind of slip through your red wall and get to the blue wall to start fighting. Just communicating with your other jam ref about positioning, if one of y'all is more agile than the other. Or I'm also usually the shortest ref in the mix. So if you have another jam ref that's really tall, just having that kind of consistent, like, you know what, I'm going to try to stay behind you as much as I can because I have a good view no matter where I am from my height. And hand signals. Clear hand signals will tell everybody, not just other officials that are off in their positions, but the audience as well, if they know what to look for. The announcers, if they're trying to pick up as much information as possible. Why you're holding 3 points and not 4. So like Addie was saying before, there's 2, and this is why. 2, and this is why. And repeating, making sure you have that bandwidth to cut track, go into the box, cut track, go into the box. It also makes you look like you know what you're doing when you have repeated signals. Why the jammer isn't lead, same thing, not lead. This is why, not lead. This is why. And that the jammer is in the box for 2. So let's say that they get a high block and then they curse really loudly. They're going to get that misconduct, 2 penalties. They're in the box for 2. Track cut or high block, misconduct, 2, off into the box.
So we've talked about several of these examples already in regards to how to clear up communication. So your body language is going to say a lot to you. Making eyes with your scorekeeper is going to let them know whether or not, like if they're giving you question eyes, which look like this, you'll know to ask them a question, right? And kind of, you can send back question eyes to be like, what do you need? And they're like, I have no idea. There's a lot that you can do with your nonverbal communication here. You can flash points back to be able to get a confirmation. So if your scorekeeper is like 3 and you're like 4, like 3, like, no, I'm talking about 4, like they'll pick up 4, they'll get it. Scorekeepers can stand to show that they don't understand, and that can happen in game or in between jams. And using those hand signals to figure out what is going on when in doubt, please go and talk it out. So you don't need to like stop a jam while a jam is happening to do it, but at the end of the jam, go over and get everything cleared up to make sure that you guys are on the same page. That's also why we send jam referees over at the end of a period to check to see if there's anything else before we close out that period. It's like, go check, go talk. If there's anything that you needed to do, just make sure you check it out. End of the jam communication. So just to call out, we've got about 7 minutes left. We're going to exit. We're going to have the other group exit from their breakout room. We'll get back together here in a second. So this will be our last slide, which is topical because it's the end of the jam. It's the end of the slides. So it's the end of the jam. You're a jam referee. You're trying to figure out what you should be doing with your points. First thing, breathe. You have a second to breathe. I promise that you do. Hold your point hand up against your shoulder. So I do it like this. I'll have my hand sitting here. And even if this hand was holding points down at my side, when I bring it up here, I close my fist and I just am taking a second to think about it. And if I don't know, if I have all the information, I'm going to check. So I'm going to look at the OPRs. The OPRs don't have anything to tell me. They're like, no, that was a good pass. You're good. I check the box. Is there a point that I have in the box? Oh yeah, I was going to give 2, but actually now I'm going to give 3 because there's that box point. And then I'm going to do my last bit. I'm going to go to see if there's any skaters who are currently going to the box. Maybe it was one more call at the very end of the jam. And I didn't hear it because it got muddied up in my 4 whistles to call off the jam from my lead jammer. But I see them going over. So I actually have 4 points now. So I'm going to keep them all here. And then once I know it, we're going to do this with all the confidence in the world. We want to show the entire audience. We're going to hold this up for 15 of the 30 seconds. That's what I like, and that's what I usually teach. And the reason for that is you're definitely going to catch your scorekeeper's eye. But you also get to let the audience know, and then the jammer gets to look at it and go, yes, because they're looking for their points too. You go back to the jam line. It is cool when both jam refs put their hands down at the same time at the jam line. It's like, oh man, they know what they're doing.
It's very
okay.
marching band. Yes.
Yeah, it's so sweet.
It's so sweet. I make a little noise when I do it. We go, woo. So you put your points down. You make sure that your scorekeeper sees it. If your scorekeeper is not catching your eye, go to them. They do not come to you. You go to them. Make sure that they're replying with the correct points. And then lastly, check the scoreboard. You may have seen them nod every single time, and there may have been a scoreboard malfunction where they just it didn't get picked up for some reason. So that little box that's next to the big score box, check the little box to make sure that all of your points that you collected in that jam have been recorded. Okay. So from here, we are going to have all of our other friends join us. The pop-up quiz, you all will get to have that in the slides. We'll make sure that we put the answers in the slides as well. And we're gonna have more here for you. So as everybody is coming in and coming over, I see people are coming in. If you don't have a games history, make one and make it today. It takes all of 3 minutes. If you have at least one game, please make one. I cannot express to you how important this is, because if you are going to even like a different local league and they don't know anything about you, this helps for them to know, where can I staff you? And it's not to pigeonhole you into a spot that you've always done before, but it can also start a conversation of, oh, I can see this person only has OPR experience. I can ask them if they want to jam referee, and we can open something up, and maybe they've been practicing at practice. But I've seen many people these days don't have a games history, and if they start to travel, I'm like, I don't know anything about you, and you didn't send me anything when you said, yeah, I can do this game. Your games history helps us start that conversation. So please make one today. If you don't have one, you don't have to migrate it over. You can just get a fresh one created for you.
Yeah, get a fresh one created for you. Start one right now, because otherwise
start one
you're
yesterday.
Be like me. Start one yesterday. Otherwise, you'll be like me, and you're going back to videos from 2017 to try to figure out, where was I? Who was the head NSO? Who was the head referee? Don't do that. It has been tens of hours on social media trying to find those information.
And speaking of videos, a really good tip that I got from Doesn't Matter was, if you have footage, put a link to YouTube in the notes, so that if you are applying for something that's not in your region, or just so whoever the tournament head or crew head, if they have a chance to see you skate, see you in action, that might be the difference between being invited or not.
It actually has changed who I've selected for tournaments, because I can see numbers don't mean anything. To be very clear, just because you have 600 games doesn't mean that you're a good official. But if I watch what you've done, and I can see what you've done in the past. I can tell your quality from watching your video. It's unfortunately harder for NSOs because NSOs, they're wonderful, helpful individuals, but the optics of the game that are captured through video, it's really hard to see like what their experience
How good are you
is.
at writing on that piece of paper?
Exactly. And so then it's really good to reach out to those references to say, hey, what has been your experience of working with this individual? That way you can kind of help make a crew. Bruce, do you have any tips or tricks about if you're looking at somebody's games history to pick what position they're going to do as an NSO? What kind of helps to guide you?
Good question. So if we're looking at games history, and for those NSOs that just jumped in, make a games history, is that I look at how many games someone's done on a specific position if I've never worked with them before. And I also hopefully have asked them in getting them working for the game. I've sort of found out if there's something that's a stretch goal for them. And then I try to pair people who might have a lot of experience in something with someone who doesn't have as much experience with something. Doesn't matter if it's the PLTs or in the penalty box. I always try to have someone who has more games and then someone who might be learning and try to pair up people that way.
Yeah, same thing for skating officials. If you have a jam ref that's newer, can have that gee, what did you call it? Like anchor
Yes, an
position.
anchor, an anchor.
Yeah.
Learn from all sorts of people.
Make your games history. Finally, thank you all so much. 2 hours has flown by for me. I don't know if it's flown by for you. And there's a bunch of information here. So thank you so much for attending our webinar that's hosted today by the Virginia Roller Derby Network. If you have enjoyed and found value in this presentation, you can donate to us for doing this. And you can pick up some merch from our Threadless or our bonfire. We will have a survey that will be going out. That way you all can tell us what you think and what you want next time. We do try to chunk up pieces of what we're teaching inside of the VRDN because there's just so much in the rules of roller derby. And that tends to help. So if you're like, I would love to have an entire clinic on contact, which is what we just happened to teach last year, and we will do a webinar again on in the future. We want to hear it. We want to know. If you want to know everything that there is to know about how to run a scoreboard, if you want to know how to be a head ref or a head NSO, anything that suits your fancy, please let us know in the survey, as well as what worked today, what was good. Was the nerd space sections good? Was the scoreboard paper? I love the slides that I saw for Brews and Tanks section. Was the scoreboard paperwork or scorekeeper paperwork good to explain things? Like what helps in terms of the learning? So please let us know that. And we're at time. So thank you again so much.
I think we did pretty good for our first one.
We did it.
Yeah, we did it, guys.
We did it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for
everyone.
all your thanks.
Also, I'm going to throw it in the chat. If anybody has any additional questions, you can, I can't type and talk at the same time, rollerderbynetwork.org. You can email us at events@varollerderbynetwork.org. If you have any suggestions or comments, feedback, let me know. I would love to hear it and pass it on to my fellow VRDN folks.